Welcome to another episode of Pistons of Fury. In this episode, we're connecting our Borgeson power steering box to our LS power steering pump and also routing in a cooler. Alright, in this episode we are tackling the power steering system in our LS swap. And there's a few different components to this, so there's a few different things we're going to be doing. I have the Borgeson box, which is a swap. It's modified for the Mopar chassis for this B-body that I have. That's already in the car, it's kind of placed. There's a second part to this episode, which is actually going to be finishing the install of the Borgeson box, so I'll be doing that in a future episode once I get the engine out and actually have room to move around and finish that install. But the piece that I do need to finish before I pull the engine to do all the cleaning and painting is the power steering setup and plumbing. So I have this hose kit from Borgeson, which consists of these two pieces. So we've got a high pressure side and a low pressure side, and then I have this stock power steering reservoir, which I've kind of modified and I'm in the process of refabbing up to work with my application and where I want to put it. And then finally just a cheap derail power steering cooler. So this is a pretty standard cooler, pretty cheap. It's just basically one tube that goes through a bunch of fins. You don't need a whole lot of cooling, but since I am running wider than stock wheels and tires, I figured it was probably good insurance for the entire system. A few other things to note. I'm using the stock LS compressor on the engine, so it all works with the belts and everything. You don't have to mess around with that. There is one change. There's a special adapter that you have to get because the new LS style compressor, or pump, sorry, not the compressor, the pump, uses a different seal, which is not flange. It has like a little O-ring. I think it's called a Viton, V-I-T-O-N fitting. So other than that, it's a pretty straightforward install. The other component is the power steering pump has three inputs. It has two low side and one high side. So I am going to have to plug one of those. If you had a modern car with an LS engine, it would have what's called a hydro boost, which is GM's. It's like some kind of pump configuration thing that generates pressure for power accessories. That's on newer model GM cars. I don't have that, so we're going to be plugging one of the low side holes on the power steering pump, and then we'll basically have a high side from our steering box, and we'll have a low side that routes through this cooler and the reservoir. So, gonna get started. First thing we're gonna do is find a place for this cooler to go on the front of the car, and I think I have that that kind of picked out. So we'll take a look at that and then start fabbing up some mounting brackets. Progress update time. So we have the tank in place. Right on the other side of that is the cooler mounted vertically. So what we have to do now is basically just start to mock up some lines. So the one thing I need to do is I need to take the Borgeson line, which I showed at the beginning of the video, just over here, navigate through my mess. And it's we're going to do the low pressure first, and then we'll go to high pressure because I'm still actually waiting on that part to adapt the high pressure. So low pressure, it came with this really lame low pressure line with one of these permanent crimp kind of things. So this needs to come off, and I basically just need this piece, and this isn't an exact fit. I'm not sure kind of what they were thinking with this thing. It was supposed to be for a Mopar. I mean, the ends are correct, but it's not the right length, so I'm not really just not sure. I guess it's universal. This was 80 bucks, these two lines together. So if I were to do this over, I'd probably just try to source the ends, because as you can see here, this just screws off, right? So these are just two hose ends, which you could probably pick up for like 20-30 bucks and then have the rest of the hose made. I've got a local Napa to me that can actually do these crimp fittings. So anyway, lesson learned there. But I'm going to use this because that's what I have. So we're going to pull this off. We'll put this on the power steering box, and then we'll try to run some line and see how far we get. And another update. So we've got this fully plumbed. So basically have our line down here from power steering box, which comes through a 3/8 inch, which goes up to the front into our cooler right there, and then out of the cooler back under and up into the reservoir. And then I also have I welded this and basically just have that downspout, which goes below my air intake and down right here below the exhaust into the top of the power steering pump. Now I'm going to have to put some really nice heat shielding on this. I'm going to have heat shielding on all this exhaust anyway, but this is a little too close for my liking, so we'll have to figure out how to manage that, but it should not be an issue. We'll have more than enough heat shielding in this engine bay. Okay, so the last thing I need to do is just plumb my high pressure line, but for that I've got to wait for my adapter. So the next clip in this video that you'll see is going to be me talking about that adapter, probably, because it's a little bit of a... I didn't know that I guess they'd changed the fitting types between these two things. So if you are putting an older, or putting a newer engine with a newer power steering pump into an older chassis, this next piece is for you. And here we have it, the final piece of the puzzle. So this is an adapter. This one specifically is from Dirty Dingo Motorsports. Funny name, but they kind of do a lot of stuff for LS conversions. So this takes us from a Viton fitting, which is this fitting right here with the O-ring, to a typical flare fitting that you would find on older style power steering pumps, you know, across Chevy, Mopar, Ford. The Saginaw type is what I have here in this car. So it's the newer kind, so it takes this fitting, so this basically threads into the power steering pump, and then my my power steering hose that I got pre-made from Borgeson is the flare fitting type, so that basically threads right in here. So this should make the entire thing work. So last thing I need to do on this is get this installed, but that's pretty much the end of this video. Probably not going to film this last part of me just kind of trying to wrestle this in. It's kind of tight confines, but that's it for the power steering. The part 2 of the power steering will actually be the Borgeson box setup, which I'll do in a future episode once I get the engine back out, because I'll just have more room. I've got to basically shorten the column and pin it and make sure the steering's all aligned. So that's a whole separate project. But power steering, fluid-wise, plumbing-wise, is complete as of this part. So thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned. We're getting real close to being able to call the engine compartment done and all our plumbing done. And then it's just a little matter of cleaning some stuff up and doing some painting and coating. So we're getting close. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.